A millionaire was about to sign and lose everything until a poor janitor whispered in his ear. And what he did next surprised everyone. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy! David Miller was about to sign the contract that would seal the biggest business merger of his career. Sterling Corporation promised to take his company to a whole new level. Billions were at stake. He was focused, just seconds away from signing the contract when the door to the room opened. Anna, one of the cleaning staff, walked in with her carton. "Sorry, I'll just empty the trash real quick," she said softly and respectfully. No one seemed to mind. They were all too busy celebrating ahead of time. Anna walked over to the trash can next to David's chair. She bent down, pretending to adjust the bags. Then she leaned slightly to the side, bringing her face close to his. That's when she whispered in a barely audible voice, "Don't sign. It's a trap." David froze. His hand stopped just millimeters from the paper. The pen slipped from his fingers and landed softly on the wooden table. "What?" he whispered, stunned. Na slowly stood up and looked at him seriously, then turned her eyes away as if nothing had happened. She picked up the trash can and started pushing her cart toward the door like it was just part of her routine. But David couldn't take his eyes off her. David? Leandro, his longtime business partner and friend, leaned toward him with a strange smile. "Everything all right, Mr. Miller?" Javier asked from across the table. "Are you ready to sign?" David swallowed hard. The contract was still there, untouched. The folder with the merger details was open in front of everyone. He looked at Leandro's face, then Javier's. And finally at the door, where Anna was just about to leave. The whole world seemed a little off balance. "I need 5 minutes," he said suddenly, standing up abruptly. 5 minutes. Leandro tried to keep his tone light, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Is everything okay?" "I need to take care of something," David replied as he walked toward the door. "Mr. Miller, everyone's here. All the terms have been reviewed." "There's nothing left to change," Javier protested, starting to sound annoyed. 5 minutes, David repeated firmly. Without waiting for any more objections, he stepped out the door and pushed it closed behind him. Anna was just a few steps down the hallway, pushing her cart. When she heard his quick footsteps behind her, she stopped. "You," David said firmly, pointing at her. "With me now?" She hesitated, surprised, but nodded. They walked in silence to a small break room. David walked in first and she followed. He shut the door firmly behind them and looked at her with a controlled intensity. "Explain now," he said, arms crossed and eyes locked on hers. "And convince me you're not completely insane for interrupting me like that." Anna stood there holding a trash bag in one hand. "I know how it sounds, but I overheard conversations, things no one else did. They're setting you up." "Who's they?" "Sterling and your partner Leandro." Her voice shook. Slightly, but then steadied. "They're using the contract to transfer hidden debts and to stabilize your company. If you sign it, you'll be giving everything away." David stared at her for a long moment. Part of him wanted to laugh. The other part couldn't ignore the chill that ran down his spine. "What's your name?" "Anna." "How long have you worked?" "7. Here?" 8 months on the night shift." "All right, Anna." He stepped closer, his gaze firm. "Let me be clear. If this is a lie, a conspiracy theory, or some attempt to get attention, you're fired on the spot." Anna bit her lip but didn't look away. "I understand and I accept that. But if I stay silent and you lose everything, I'd never forgive myself." David turned his face and looked at his reflection in the glass wall. Chicago kept spinning below. But his world had just cracked. This woman had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Yet, she was standing there. "Anyway, do you have proof?" he asked without looking at her. "I do. Photos, records, screenshots. I can show you tonight. 7 o'clock, right here in this room," he said, nodding toward the space. "Bring everything. If you don't convince me, it'll be your last day here." Anna just nodded. David waited for her to leave before pressing his forehead against the cold wall. Outside, the contract was still waiting for his signature. But now, for the first time in his entire career, he was hesitating. David walked back into the meeting room, his heart pounding. All eyes turned to him as he pushed the door open. Leandro was leaning over the table, speaking quietly with Javier, but straightened up quickly when he saw him. "Did you take care of what you needed?" Leandro asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Yes." David walked toward the table, but didn't sit down. He looked at the contract, then at the faces around him. "Actually, I think I need to review a few clauses again." "Review?" Javier frowned. "Mr. Miller, we spent weeks going over every detail of this document. And that's exactly why I want to take one last look." David picked up the folder and closed it firmly. "Let's reschedule for tomorrow." The silence in the room was tense. Leandro stood up slowly, his fists pressed against the table. "David, this doesn't make sense. We're wasting valuable time. Sterling has other interested parties. You know that. Then let them be." David stared coldly at his childhood friend. "One night won't make a difference." "It will." Javier slammed his hand on the table. "The market's unstable. The stock is up. It's now or never." David watched the man's agitated reaction. Anna had been right about something. This pressure wasn't normal. "The decision is mine." He took the contract and placed it in his briefcase. "I'll see you tomorrow." Without giving them a chance to argue, David left the room, leaving behind a group of visibly angry men. At exactly 7 o'clock, David walked into the break room. Anna was already there, sitting in one of the chairs with a small backpack on her lap. She stood as soon as she saw him. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice steadier than in the morning. "Show me what you've got." David sat across from her at the small round table. Anna opened her backpack and took out her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the photos. "It all started 3 weeks ago. I was cleaning Leandro's office when I heard voices in the next room." She paused and took a deep breath. "I recognized his voice and a woman's. They were talking about you." David leaned forward. "Go on." "Her name is Sophia. Blonde, tall, always wearing expensive clothes." Anna slid her finger on the screen and showed him a blurry photo taken through a crack in the door. "This is her." David felt a chill run down his spine. Sofia Delgado, his ex-girlfriend, the one who ended things 2 years ago, saying they were too different. How was she involved in this? "She and Leandro, they're together now and they're planning something against you." Anna swiped to the next photo. "Listen to this." She hit play on a recording. The audio wasn't great, but the voices were clear enough. "Once he signs, we'll have full control of the assets." "Are you sure?" David suspects nothing. David's always been too naive to notice when he's being betrayed. "It was true with me, and it will be true. Now, what if he finds out?" "He won't. Trust me, Sophia. In 48 hours, we'll own his company." David ran a hand over his face, the world spinning around him. Leandro's voice was unmistakable. And Sophia's laugh, the one that once made him fall in love, now sounded like poison. "Is there more?" he asked, his voice rough. Anna nodded and flipped through more photos. Documents snapped in a hurry. Contracts with clauses different from the ones David had seen. Bank transfers to accounts he didn't recognize. They changed the original contract. Anna pointed to one of the images. "See the section? In the version you have, it says you'll keep 60% control, but in the real one, the one they'll use when you sign, you're left with only 20%. This is..." David took the phone and brought it closer. "This is document fraud. It's a crime. And that's not all." Anna moved to the next photo. "This $15 million transfer happened last week from Sterling's account to Leandro's personal account." David stood up and walked to the window. Chicago sparkled below in the darkness, but to him everything felt dim. "Why?" he murmured more to himself. "Leandro's been my best friend for 15 years. We went to college together, built everything from scratch. Sometimes people change when there's a lot of money involved," Anna said, putting the phone away. Or maybe they were always like that, and you just didn't want to see it. David turned around, still trying to process everything. Why are you telling me this? You could lose your job. Anna hesitated because it's the right thing to do. I can't just stay quiet and watch someone get betrayed like that. David studied her. There was more to it. He could feel it. But Anna clearly wasn't ready to say it. These pieces of evidence. How can I be sure they're real? I understand why you don't trust me, Anna said as she put her phone away. But if you sign tomorrow, you'll lose everything. They've already planned every step. But the evidence. I need more proof, he said at last. I need to be absolutely sure. I can get more, but it'll be risky. Then be careful, David said, looking straight at her. If this is true, if Leandro really is betraying me. He couldn't finish the sentence. Well, find out the truth, Anna said firmly. After she left, David stayed alone in the room, staring out the window. For the first time in 15 years of friendship, he was doubting Leandro. And that doubt was growing inside him. The next morning, David arrived at the office earlier than usual. He had spent the whole night thinking about the evidence Anna had shown him. The images of the forged documents wouldn't leave his mind, nor would Leandro's voice in that incriminating recording. He needed more answers. David went straight to human resources. He asked to see Anna Sanoz's file. Martha, the HR employee, looked surprised. The cleaning lady's file? She asked, adjusting her glasses. Did something happen? Just a routine check, David lied. I need to confirm a few details. Martha brought him a thin folder. David opened it and his eyes widened when he saw the attached resume. Anna Santos, 28 years old, degree in Business Administration from Northwestern University, with a specialization in corporate finance. Previous experience in business consulting at McKinsey Company. McKinsey? David murmured, stunned. Excuse me, Martha leaned over to see what he was reading. It's nothing, thank you. David quickly closed the folder and handed it back. He left HR with his mind racing. Anna had worked at McKinsey, one of the most respected consulting firms in the world. How did someone with that resume end up working as a janitor? During lunch, David looked for Anna in the halls. He found her on the 12th floor cleaning the windows in one of the smaller conference rooms. Anna, he said, approaching her. I need to talk to you. She turned around, surprised to see him. Did something happen? Did you find out more about Leandro? Actually, I found something out about you. David crossed his arms. Northwestern University. McKinsey & Company, corporate finance. Anna's face went pale. She dropped the cleaning cloth and took a deep breath. You looked into my file. Why didn't you tell me who you really are? Anna looked around to make sure they were alone before answering. Because it doesn't matter, she said bitterly. It doesn't matter how many degrees I have or where I used to work. To everyone here, I'm just the Latina cleaning lady. But, Mackenzie, that's impressive. How did I end up here? Anna cut him off. You want the truth? I worked at McKinsey for 2 years. I was good at it. Really good. But when it came time for promotions, there was always a reason why I didn't move up. David listened closely, noticing the pain in her eyes. First, they said I needed more experience. Then that my communication style didn't match the company culture. Anna gave a humorless laugh. Translation: I was too confident for my position, but didn't look the part for a leadership role. That's discrimination. You could have filed a lawsuit. With what money? Anna picked up the water. Fuck it. And who would believe a Latina over a company like McKinsey? David stayed silent, trying to process the injustice. And your family? You mentioned a sister. Maria is 22, Anna said softly. She was born with a congenital heart defect. We need $200,000 for surgery. When I was let go from McKinsey, she paused. Actually, when they asked me to resign, I had to take whatever job I could find. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. Anna nodded. The health plan covers part of Maria's treatment, and even though the pay is low, it helps with her medication. I can't afford to be unemployed. David felt a tightness in his chest. Here was a brilliant woman, educated at one of the best universities in the country with experience at a top firm working as a janitor because of prejudice and family needs. Anna, I had no idea. Well, now you do. She went back to cleaning the windows. That's why I recognized the forged documents right away. I spent years analyzing corporate contracts. Those discrepancies stood out to me immediately. And that's why me about the betrayal. Anna stopped cleaning and looked straight at him. Partly yes, but also because she hesitated. Because you're different from the other executives here. I've been watching you for months. You treat everyone with respect no matter their role. And when I saw they were planning to destroy you the same way they ruined my career, you couldn't stay quiet. Exactly. David watched her for several long seconds. Anna Santos wasn't just a cleaning lady who had overheard something by chance. She was a highly qualified professional who had recognized a corporate fraud and decided to act, even if it meant risking the little she had. Anna, when all this is over, David, Leandro's voice echoed down the hallway. They both turned to see Leandro approaching, a curious look on his face. What are you doing here? Leandro asked, glancing from David to Anna. Just checking on how the cleaning is going, David replied quickly. You know how particular I am. Leandro looked at Anna, who had gone back to wiping the windows, pretending not to hear their conversation. Since when do you personally care about the cleaning staff? Leandro's tone clearly showed his suspicion. Since I decide to pay more attention to details, David forced a smile. Speaking of which, did you reschedule the meeting with Starling for this afternoon? Yes, 3 o'clock. Leandro kept watching Anna. I hope there won't be any more hesitation. Of course not. David began, walking toward the elevator. Let's grab lunch. I need to go over a few contract adjustments with you. Leandro followed him, but not before casting one last suspicious look toward Anna. At the elevator, Leandro pressed the button and turned to David. You've been acting strange since yesterday, he said, his voice probing. Is there something I should know about? David chose his words carefully. Just pre-negotiation nerves. You know how I get before big decisions. David, we've been friends for 15 years. We built this company together. Leandro placed a hand on his shoulder. If something's bothering you, you can tell me. David looked into his best friend's eyes, searching for any sign of deception. But Leandro looked genuinely concerned. I'm fine, Carlos. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. Of course we are. Leandro smiled. This merger will make us the clear leaders in the market. Trust me. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. But as they descended, David couldn't stop thinking about Anna's words. Sometimes money changes people. And for the first time in 15 years, he was beginning to wonder if he really knew Leandro. That afternoon, Anna was finishing up cleaning the executive bathroom on the 15th floor when she heard footsteps coming down the hallway. It was nearly 5 o'clock. Most executives had already gone home. She frowned, curious who might still be around. Through the slightly open door, she recognized Leandro's deep voice. Speaking to someone. A woman responded, and Anna felt a chill run through her. It was Safia. Are you sure it's her? Safia asked, her voice sharp with irritation. Absolutely. I looked into it after seeing David talking to her yesterday, Leandro replied, his voice getting closer. Anna Santos, 28 years old. Former Mackenzie, too smart for her own good. Anna held her breath, pressing herself against the bathroom wall. Her heart pounded when she realized they were talking about her. And do you think she heard our conversation last week? Sophia sounded worried. I'm sure of it. I checked the security cameras. She was cleaning my office at the exact time we were finalizing the details. Leandro paused. And today, David was acting completely different. He backed out of signing yesterday, asked a ton of questions about clauses we'd already reviewed. Damn. Safia's voice rose in panic. If David finds out about us, about the money we transferred, he won't. Not if we act fast. Leandro cut her off. I need to get rid of the Cleaning lady before she causes more problems. Anna covered her mouth with both hands, trying to control her breathing. They knew she had discovered their plan. How? Sophia asked in the most humiliating way possible. I'll accuse her of stealing right in front of everyone. Leandro's voice was cold. No one will believe a fired janitor over me. And if David tries to defend her, David's been my best friend for 15 years. Even if he has doubts, he won't confront me publicly over a cleaning. Eyes, feeling tears start to form. She had risked everything to warn David about the betrayal, and now she was going to be destroyed for it. When? Safia asked. Now, I'll call her to the main auditorium, announced an urgent safety meeting for all employees. The footsteps faded, and Anna stayed in the restroom a few more minutes trying to regain her composure. Her hands were trembling as she thought about Maria, her sick sister, who depended on the health plan from this job. If she was fired for cause, she would lose not only her salary, but also the medical coverage. The building's intercom crackled. All employees must report immediately to the main auditorium for an urgent safety meeting. Repeating, all employees to the main auditorium, Anna took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stepped out of the restroom. No matter what happened, she wouldn't give Leandro the satisfaction of seeing her break. The auditorium was packed. Employees from every department whispered to one another, curious about the sudden meeting. Anna entered from the back, keeping her head high, and stood near the back wall. David sat in the front row alongside other executives. He looked around the auditorium, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Anna saw confusion in his face, as if he didn't know the reason for the meeting either. Leandro stepped onto the stage carrying a manila folder. His face was serious, almost grim. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. His voice echoed through the microphone. Unfortunately, I need to address a very serious issue involving the security of our company. A nervous murmur spread through the room. Yesterday, we discovered that confidential documents were photographed and removed from the executive offices. Leandro paused for effect. This is not only a breach of contract, but also a case of corporate espionage. Anna felt a chill run through her. She knew exactly where this was going. After a detailed investigation with our security team, we've identified the person responsible. Leandro looked directly at Anna. Anna Santos from the cleaning staff. Would you please come forward? All eyes turned to Anna. She felt hundreds of stares on her, some curious, others already judging. Her legs were shaking, but she walked to the front of the room, keeping her dignity despite the humiliation she knew was coming. Miss Santos, Leandro continued, his voice taking on a cold, authoritative tone. Photos of confidential company documents were found on your phone. How do you explain that? Anna looked at David sitting in the front row. He seemed shocked, caught between surprise and confusion. She could see the struggle in his eyes. Anna began, but Leandro cut her off. In addition, he said, security cameras show you entering executive offices outside of your scheduled cleaning hours. He opened the photos were passed along the front row. Anna saw David take one and his face twisted into what looked like her on the stage. However, given your previously clean record, we're offering termination for cause instead of involving law enforcement. This isn't fair, Anna finally found her voice. I was trying to protect. Protect what? Leandro interrupted harshly. Your own interests. Were you planning to sell this information to our competitors? No, I was protecting Mr. Miller from enough. Leandro slammed his fist on the podium. I won't allow a dishonest employee to defame this company or its executives. Anna looked at David in desperation, silently pleading for him to say something to defend her. But Davi 22:57 remained silent, his face a mask of inner conflict. Security, please escort Miss Santos out of the building. Leandro signaled to two uniformed guards. She is no longer permitted on our premises. David, Anna cried out as the guards approached. You know I was trying to help. You saw the evidence. David stood up slowly, and for a moment Anna thought he was finally going to speak. That he would stand up against the injustice happening right in front of him. But then he looked away, his jaw tight. "I'm sorry it's come to this, Anna," he said, softly, almost in a whisper. "But the evidence is very clear." Anna's heart shattered. The man she had risked everything for, the one she tried to save from devastating betrayal, was choosing to believe his betrayer. "David, please." Her voice broke. "You know who I really am. You know I would never." "That's enough, Miss Santos." Leandro stepped down from the stage and walked toward her, a cruel smile on his face. "The act is over." The security guards grabbed Anna by the arms, but she pulled away with dignity. "I can walk on my own." Her voice was steady again, even though tears were streaming down her face. As she was being escorted out of the auditorium, Anna stopped and turned to David one last time. "When you find out the truth," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "remember, you had the chance to do the right thing today, and you chose not to." David closed his eyes. 24:2 as if her words were physical blows. Anna was escorted out of the building under the watchful eyes of hundreds of co-workers. Some looked sorry for her. Others looked relieved that the problem had been taken care of. On the sidewalk, one of the guards handed her a box with her few personal belongings. "I'm sorry, Miss Santos," said the older guard, clearly embarrassed. "Orders are orders." Anna nodded, took the box, and started walking toward the subway station. With each step, she felt the weight of humiliation and betrayal. But even more than that, she felt the heavy burden of knowing that David was walking straight into a trap. And now she had no way to warn him. Back in the auditorium, David remained seated even after all the other employees had left. Leandro came over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know this is hard, David." "She seemed like a good employee," he said, his voice full of fake sympathy. "But sometimes people let us down." David looked at his friend, searching for any sign of dishonesty. But Leandro looked genuinely concerned. The evidence was very clear, David murmured mostly to himself. "Yes, it was," Leandro agreed. "But now we can focus on what really matters. The merger with Sterling. Our company is about to become an empire. David, we can't let disloyal employees ruin our dream." David nodded slowly. But a part of him, a small but persistent part, couldn't forget the honest desperation in Anna's voice when she called his name. "Shall we reschedule the signing for tomorrow morning?" Leandro asked. "First thing. No more delays." "Yes," David stood up, still trying to process everything. First thing. As he left the auditorium, David couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And, still determined to find a way to save the man who hadn't been able to save her, David couldn't sleep at all that night. The image of Anna being escorted out of the building wouldn't leave his mind. The desperation in her voice, the way she called out his name, begging him to stand up for her, and he had stayed silent. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he gave up trying to sleep. He got dressed quickly and drove to the office. The building was empty with only the night guards patrolling the halls. David used his access card to take the executive elevator. Something about Leandro's accusations didn't make sense. Anna had shown deep knowledge of corporate contracts, had spotted discrepancies that only someone with financial experience would notice. Why would a woman with that kind of expertise try to sell company secrets? And why would she risk everything to warn him about a betrayal if she was involved in corporate espionage? David reached his office and turned on his computer. He decided to investigate on his own. He started by reviewing the merger files with Sterling Corporation. He opened every document, every spreadsheet, every attached contract. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but Anna had mentioned hidden clauses. If they were real, David knew they would be hard to find. 3 hours later, he found the first irregularity. In the main contract on page 47 there was a reference to Addendum C that David had never seen before. According to the document, this addendum included, wasn't there, Intrigued, David accessed the company's main server. He used his CEO credentials to browse the most protected files. Finally, in an encrypted folder he had never seen before, he found what he was looking for. Addendum C. Post-merger asset distribution. David opened the file and felt his blood run cold. According to the document, after the merger, 80% of Miller Technologies' assets would be transferred to a subsidiary called Sterling International Holdings. David had never heard of this company. He kept reading and found out that Sterling International Holdings was registered in the Cayman Islands and had only two main shareholders, Leandro Vega and Sofia Delgado. "This can't be," David murmured, reading the document 3 more times just to be sure. But it was all there in small print and complex legal terms. The plan was both clever and cruel. David would sign the contract thinking he was keeping majority control of the company, when in fact he'd be handing over almost everything to a shell company secretly controlled by his best friend and his ex-girlfriend. David printed the document and kept digging. Using his CEO credentials, he accessed the company's several so-called merger preparation transfers had been made, totaling $23 million. The money had supposedly gone to Sterling Corporation accounts, but David noticed something strange. The account numbers didn't match the ones listed in the original contract. Using his access to the corporate banking system, David traced where the money actually went. $23 million had been transferred to a personal account under the name L. Vega, Leandro Vega. 15 years of friendship, David whispered, feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. But there was more. David found emails between Leandro and Sterling executives that he had never been copied on. The messages revealed that the merger was really a hostile takeover in disguise. Sterling Corporation wasn't even a real, active company. It was just a front for the scam Leandro and Sofia had set up. In one email dated 3 weeks ago, Leandro wrote, "David is completely naive. 15 years of friendship blinded him to the possibility of betrayal. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll already have full control of the assets and be out of the country." Sofia was right. He really is too predictable. David had to stop reading. His hands were shaking as he held the mouse. His best friend, the man who had been the best man at his wedding, who cried with him when his mother passed away, who stood beside him while they built the company, was planning to destroy him completely. He kept investigating and uncovered even more of the plan. After David signed the contract, Leandro would announce an emergency restructuring, claiming made-up financial issues. David would be forced to step down as CEO for the good of the company, and Leandro would take full control. Then all the real assets would be transferred to Sterling International Holdings, leaving David with nothing but debts and legal responsibilities. The plan was so well thought out that David felt both disgust and a twisted sense of respect. Leandro had spent months, maybe even years, planning every single detail. David also found recorded phone calls stored by the company's security system. One of them, from 2 weeks ago, was between Leandro and Sofia. "Leandro, are you sure David won't suspect anything?" "Sofia? Leandro? I dated him for 2 years. I know every one of his weaknesses. David always trusts people too much. It's his biggest strength and his biggest flaw. What if he finds out before the signing? He won't. But if he does, we have the forged documents. We can claim he was trying to commit fraud himself with my word against his." "You really hate him that much?" "It's not hate, it's ambition. David was a good boyfriend, but he was always limited, too small for my dreams. With you, I can have everything I've ever wanted." David paused the recording. 0. Feeling sick. Sofia had ended things with him 2 years ago, saying they wanted different things in life. In truth, she'd just been looking for someone more ambitious and more willing to cross lines. By 6 o'clock in the morning, David had gathered enough evidence to put Leandro and Sofia in prison. But he also realized something painful.